reality of it is you build it as you grow. And you have to be thinking about kind of what does that next leg of my journey look like? And there's two things you have to get right. You have to have the right skill set and you have to have the right mindset. And that changes over time.
Rise Up with Rise Growth Partners. Joe Duran and the Rise team share hard-won lessons from building top wealth management firms, showing you what it takes to create a lighthouse brand that inspires clients, attracts talent, and fuels growth.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rise Up with Rise Growth Partners. For those of you who are new here, I'm Jennifer Geoghegan, Chief Marketing Officer at Rise. And I'm really excited. For the first time, we have my colleague Phil Jacobson with us. Phil is a managing partner who leads some of our business development efforts here at Rise. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good to be here.
Great to have you. And I should add that, Phil, you used to be an advisor and coach of advisors. So you've sort of seen every angle. And now you're talking to firms a lot about what's the next chapter for them. Many firms are thinking about, I've had some great success. We want to get to that next level of growth, maybe become an enterprise. And that's who you spend your days on the phone with, on these Zoom calls with, day in and day out.
It sure is, whether they want to become an enterprise or they want to join an enterprise firm. And we define that as a firm that's right around that, between 20 and 25 billion, maybe $30 billion of AUM. At that level, you've got kind of a national footprint. And that's what we're looking for, is that kind of size in terms of AUM, but also multiple geographic locations.
Yeah. And to get there, it's quite tricky. It's not just about, in my mind, it's not just about doing what you always did to be successful. So you have a lot of what I think of as honest conversations with firms about where they really are. So what do you find that is something that firms haven't considered when they even start contemplating this idea of getting to that next level that you described?
Yeah, getting to that next level really is about, you got to start with kind of where are you at today? What is your starting point? I mean, when you go to the Stanford Design Center, you say, well, I'm not going to be an interior designer, but it's like all the engineers, all the computer science folks go there. There's a little sign when you walk in that says, you are here. It's just to remind them that you got to understand, where are you at in that journey? And when I think about the journey to get to an enterprise level firm, I think about the rule of threes, right? Every $3 billion, or let's say you're even a little smaller firm, every $300 million, so 3, 6, 9, all the way up. But for the firms that we work with, they're in that $1 billion number. To get to $3 billion number, to get to the next three takes a different mindset, different kind of perspective. To get to the 9, to get to 12, to get to 15, all the way along, there are these shifts that you have to do. So you have to understand, where am I at today? What does that look like? When we were part of United Capital, I was running the Go team. Which was our practice management team. We'd have firms join us, and they'd come in and say, Phil, you're a $9 billion firm. I thought you guys would have a lot more built out. And I said, well, you know how long we've been a $9 billion firm? 2 minutes. And so it's just one of those things that the reality of it is you build it as you grow. And you have to be thinking about kind of what does that next leg of my journey look like? And there's two things you have to get right. You have to have the right skill set and you have to have the right mindset. And that changes over time. Terry Carlson, one of our managing partners on our executive team, always says, what got you here won't get you there.
Yes,
and so it's not
the Marshall Goldsmith quote. I always think of it as well.
We use that all the time.
Yeah. So in terms of assessing that, where are you now? I would imagine it's difficult for some firms because in many cases, I think of it as they're on their own island. Some of them might belong to a study group, so they'll have a better sense, but many do not. And I know when you take them through that process of figuring out where are you now, you look at 3 things. How are they managing the business? What's their enterprise platform looking like? and how are they doing on their growth strategies? Why is it important to look at all three areas?
I liken it to sitting on a three-legged stool, right? You got to grow all three of those things in balance. If one gets out of balance with the other two, it's almost impossible to sit on that three-legged stool.
Mhm.
And what we know is if we grow too fast and we don't have the right business, we don't have the right enterprise platform to support that growth, it's going to implode upon itself. There are going to be pain points that are going to be very painful for the organization as it goes through that growth. Now, you also don't want to get way too far ahead of yourself in building out your business, your leadership team, right? Because that's expensive. That's a lot of resource, a lot of personnel that you're bringing in to your organization at a very high cost. And if you don't have the growth to support that, that also becomes painful. So it's all about keeping that three-legged stool. How is your business management? How's your leadership growing? What's your platform? How are you engaging with your clients? Have you clearly defined that? And what are your growth strategies to get you to that next level? And are you thinking about what it's going to take for your organization to continue to grow? It's a law of large numbers. When you get to about $3 billion, it's harder than when you were a $1 billion. And when you're a $9 billion firm to continue a 10% growth, it's a bigger number. So how are you making that growth along the way? And having those three things in sync is going to be critical to that growth.
Mhm. So once you go through these conversations with the firms, you take them through your assessment based on everything you've learned about them. What are some surprises that they weren't anticipating? What do you find opens up their eyes when you take them through where are you today?
I want to be clear that I'm just part of the assessment process. It's a process that really is done by our managing partners and our managing directors here at Rise, bringing in a whole wealth of insight, wisdom, and experience by having been there and done that. And so, while I'm kind of leading the process and leading some of the questions in the that we're doing, it really is a team effort to bring back the perspective and the insight. But I would think the biggest missing point that we always come back to with firm is, have they done an adequate job of defining what their brand messaging is? Have they articulated it appropriately for the clients and for the advisors? Because if you're going to scale your growth, both your advisors have to understand it, have to buy into it, and have to be able to communicate that to clients who then they say, that's what I was looking for. That resonates with me and what it is that I need out of my advisor and advisor team.
Yes. And I find, Phil, because I'm in there with you sometimes learning about these firms, which is super fun. But I find often behind the curtain, the teams are actually pretty good at describing who they're a destination for, and they get really excited in sharing that with us. But they don't do a great job of sharing it out in the public when they're trying to attract great teams to join them. So I have great
That
friends.
is a great point. I can't tell you how many times I've heard Joe say, what you tell me is fantastic. I go to your website and I just don't see it. There's just this disconnect that happens. So that's a
Yeah,
great point.
very true. So you also, once you get through that honest conversation of where you are today, I know you're we're also probing on, well, what is that vision? What is your vision for the future, and what mindset do you have in striving to get there? Um, and it's still funny to me all these years later, firms still often start with just articulating the AUM. But what do you think encompasses a good, strong vision? What are you listening for when you're speaking with firms about the future?
Yeah, I like to call it, start with a motivating BHAG, right? We all know the good to great, Jim Collins, big, hairy, audacious goal. What is that goal that your team, your leadership team, your advisor team, your support staff can all get behind because it is exciting. It is kind of a strategy. It really does start with that, kind of motivating, big, hairy, audacious goal that you want to go after. And to us, that's a vector that we call it.
Mhm.
What is that kind of specialty thing that you bring to the table in terms of helping firms and clients solve? Because if you can solve that problem for the clients, what happens is you then attract advisors and you attract
Mhm.
other firms to that because everybody wants to be part of a winning team. So have you clearly articulated what that is? And then is there a market big enough, total addressable market, the TAM, for an organization? All three of those things have to be true when we're looking at a firm to say, do they have the right vision for where they want to get to? Is that something that we can get behind and really create scale, really accelerate growth?
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to that three-legged stool and what happens when firms decide they want to become an enterprise. Maybe they haven't thought through that vision clearly or how they're going to get there in enough detail. And they just start adding people, locations, capabilities. What are some breakdowns that you've seen occur when they head down that path?
Oh, the old ready, shoot, aim scenario, right? We're just going to add stuff and hopefully it all comes together. And what you end up with is just a hodgepodge. Joe likes to call it, we got a band of pirates out there. We got everybody kind of go out there. They think they're doing great stuff and they're all working hard and they're all showing up every day. But you need to bring them together as a Navy. You need to bring them together as a way to go about accomplishing that common vision, that common mission. And so if you don't have that as a grounding point, you're not going to bring in the right personnel. You're going to not have the right focus. And Jennifer, you know that that's one of the first things that we do with the firms that we partner with is we go through, and while we do the enterprise readiness assessment, that may show us where the gaps are in the way. But what we're going to do is we're going to come along and do a strategy session to say, what is your 3 to 5 year goals? What do we have to accomplish in the next year to get on the journey, get on the path to that? And then what has to happen in this next quarter, right? And so it's all about that focus, that articulation of how do you do today what's going to get us to where we want to be 3 to 5 years from now. But if you don't have that 3 to 5 year vision, that 3 to 5 year mission, guess what? You're going to be out in Kentucky as opposed to over in California is where you want to be. So
you're just adding for the sake of adding.
Nothing bad about Kentucky. I'm a bourbon guy, so I love Kentucky. But
So let's go back to the honest conversations firms have with themselves. If you think about, Phil, firms you've talked to where you've had the honest conversation and they start going down the right path versus others who get tripped up along the way, what's the difference in those leadership teams? Is it just the vision? Is there anything else you would add that we didn't touch on yet?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because as you start to scale a firm, as you start to lay out that vision, you've got to have a leader that's truly a driver. A leader that truly is refocusing. When in the early days of Rise, Joe would always say to us, there's only 2 things that matter. Number 1, we've got to get the money. Number 2, we've got to get our first client, right? Got a first firm to invest in. The rest of it just doesn't matter. And we get in these discussions, they'd be a little esoteric, and Joe would come back, hey, is it one of the 2 things? No, then let's not focus on it. Let's come back to what is important today. And so while we have that vision, we have what it is, what we've got to combat about all the time is that vision leak. And that happens within organizations. And the bigger you get, the more vision leak that you have, right? Because early on in the early days, it was you and your assistant there, and that vision was easily communicated. Then you became a little bit bigger, and there were 5 people in the office, but you could still all go to lunch and sit around the same table, and the vision was communicated. When you've got 10 or 15 or 20 locations across the country, how are you now communicating that vision? And how is that vision leak happening across the organization? What are you doing as an organization to bring that vision back on track to say, these are the 2 or 3 or 4 most important things that we're focusing on organization right now? And when you do that, it's interesting to me, the best people, your best teammates, they go, oh yeah. And they get behind that and they get excited about that because now all of the other stuff becomes noise and they can just focus on what they know is going to create a winning team, a winning organization. And everybody wants to be part of a winning team.
Yes. You make it sound really easy, Phil, but I would imagine for some leaders, it's not easy. It's personally quite challenging because they've done things in a certain way for a really long time. They're really good at it. What do you find is most difficult personally for for that leader? I hear you saying they have to be able to articulate that vision clearly, get everyone on board, keep them focused. Anything else that's like really hard for them?
I would call it leadership scaling, right? That, the team that you had that got you to your first billion or your first 3 billion is probably not the team that's going to get you to 9 or 15 billion.
Mhm.
And so you have to, along the way, scale your leadership team to match where you're at as an organization. I mean, I even heard Joe Duran say that when he was building out United Capital, and kind of looking back, is that was one of the toughest things that he had to do as he was growing, because quite frankly, we are, people, that we build relationships. That's how we built our business to begin with. And because we built those relationships with the people we work, we're like, we want to bring them along. We want to help them scale up. Some can, a lot can't. And so it is a tough situation to kind of come in and make those changes at the right time, right, to scale your leadership. And I think that's one of the things that, by having Rise as a partner, we can help you see that, help you kind of work through that with your team. Because, what Joel always say, hey, you're not going to get fired. You're just going to get a boss is what's going to happen, right? If you're not ready to get to the next
The
level.
role might change just a bit. It might
Sure.
change a bit. Yeah.
And what we find is that when that happens, people are much happier,
Yeah.
right? Because, hey, now I'm in what I do. I'm in what it makes me happy at the
Where
end
I
of the day.
used to do 5 things, I didn't like 4 of the 5, and now I get to do that one thing that I love and that I'm really good at. I love when that happens. Okay, so we're coming to the end, Phil. This was a fun discussion, an important one to have. And before we close, I'd like to ask you to share some advice with a leadership team listening who's thinking about, do I want to scale to become an enterprise? What's that honest conversation I need to have? What would you tell them? What's one step they can take, one thing to think about as they consider moving forward?
Jennifer, I wish it was just one thing, but I got 3 things. So, but it's part of a process. And the first, it starts with who are we now? What are we today? Second thing is, who do we want to be? And when do we want to do that? And third thing is, can I or can we handle that change? Change takes pressure. Change takes growing. Change takes some pain along the way. And some teams are willing to lean into that and work through that and get to the next level. And for some teams, it's not. We've had one of our partners did the assessment. We went through the whole process. We got very close to doing the deal. And they said, you know what? We're not ready. They went back and hired a few key people, and then they came back to us and said, okay, now we're ready. We've got the right team in place. We can handle the change. I, as the leader of the organization, don't feel like I'm going to be run over by a steamroller as we go through this process. So those 3 things. Who are we now? Where do we want to be? And when? And can I handle the change that's required to get there? If those 3 things, if you've got a positive response to those 3 things, then you're ready to scale up to be an enterprise level firm.
Great advice, Phil. Thank you for coming on and sharing. I'll bring you back. Look forward to hearing from you again. And thanks to the audience for joining us. As always, if there are topics you'd like to hear us talk about, please send them our way. Put them in the comments, shoot us an email, and we'll be back soon. Have a good one, Phil.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yep. Thanks, everybody.